Vault Veritas. SCP Files. Episode 51. Forked Tongue. Incident Report 4569-3.
Stop.
Third known incident report involving...
Stop, my friend, please. Here, give me that. You look terrible. I don't know what you're coming down with, but reading another report isn't going to help.
I just feel a little shaken by that last report.
So you're going to just jump straight into another one? Look, let's swap places. Nobody says you have to be the one reading everything. We've been assigned to work on this together. So you sort, and I'll read. Deal?
Yeah. Deal. Thank you, Mary.
Anytime. Now please, sit down. Incident Report 4569-6295-1. First known incident report involving SCP-4569, colloquially known as Plot Twist, and SCP-6295, colloquially known as Come See the Library. Object classes, Safe and Keter. Risk assessment level, low and very, very high. Reported by Dr. Ophelia Owens, known Serpent's hand member, formerly an assistant researcher for literary anomalies. Report discovered in Dr. Owens' room following her disappearance. Report's date is redacted. Once upon a time, in the harrowing halls of the 19th site of a secret kingdom where people tried to trap the impossible, there was a young doctor named Ophelia Owens. They had started their career bright-eyed and eager, ready to help contain some of the world's most terrifying anomalies. But Ophelia soon came to realize that the great and secret kingdom of the Foundation did not know how to wield the power it hoarded. It built cages of steel and runes and software, and played with wielding corrupted science. But its locks soon rusted, its walls cracked, and the so-called monsters inside never stopped watching and waiting for their opportunities. Often, initial containment procedures were not tight enough. The anger of the anomalies at their wrongful imprisonment would burst out and slaughter the researchers, the guards, the D-classes, sometimes hundreds at a time. And the only way to truly contain them was purely by trial and error, always at an insanely high cost. Half the time, the Foundation personnel were terrified. The other half, they were simply under an illusion of safety. And the anomalies, those that could think, at least, were always afraid. So Ophelia realized it wasn't a good system. It did not work. And as they watched the new friends they had made dwindle, torn apart, disappeared, or worse, they developed a deep, gnawing fear that they would be next. Ophelia Owens sought out a special book to protect them, SCP-4569. They knew the book was forbidden. They knew it was locked away in a vault, guarded by a pin code and fear, where only those with stuffy titles and whispered passwords dared to tread. But they also knew they weren't prepared to die in the pursuit of the Foundation's flawed mission. They cajoled the 10-digit pin to its coded safe out of a senior officer. And under the cloak of midnight, when the watchful eyes of the kingdom were heavy with sleep, Ophelia Owens tiptoed through the corridors of Site-17 to claim the story that would rewrite their fate. Ophelia knew they could not take their prize with them. There would be too many alarms, too many people mobilizing and searching. So instead, they read it right there, kneeling on the cold concrete of the site's floor. They did not notice the chill of the halls, nor feel the creeping passage of time. They were completely focused, straining their eyes to read each word, drinking in each sentence with devout eagerness. The book began at the very start of their life. It followed them as a radiant, laughing babe, their days golden with sunshine and family game nights. They smiled as they read of the summers spent on the beach, sculpting sandcastles alongside their siblings, their laughter carried away on the waves. Then the story darkened. Shadows stretched over the pages as the anomaly that shattered their world slithered into the story. They read as it devoured their elder sister, as grief settled like a storm upon their home. But even then, something remarkable had happened. The book did not veil the truth. It named the anomaly. It described in its exacting detail more than they had ever known. And it revealed something they never expected. It was already contained. No, more than that, already neutralized. The book turned its pages, sweeping through their teenage years. What had felt to them like an endless, suffocating march of anxiety and self-doubt, the book painted as something else entirely. A young teenager, steadfast and determined, scaling impossible heights despite the weight of fear pressing against their shoulders. A hero, not a failure. Never in their life had Ophelia felt so seen. The story flowed onward, seamless and sure, carrying them through their pursuit of their doctorate, through the grand doors of the Foundation, and into the halls where secrets were kept. Here the pages lingered, dwelling not on triumphs, but on loss. The gruesome ends of their colleagues, the blood-stained echoes of research gone awry. They had feared this part, the reliving. And yet the book did not twist the truth to soften its edges. It did not flinch. It recounted each moment with unwavering honesty. No cover-ups, no soothing lies, no downplays of horror. Just the simple, undeniable truth. Then, at last, they arrived at this very moment. The book turned its final page to reveal their present, their own hands upon its cover. The last line struck like a bell. Now, the book declared, it is time for Ophelia to continue their journey. With steady hands, Ophelia shut the book. They placed it back into its prison, sealed the door, and slipped silently into the night, returning to their car to begin the drive back to Site 19. And then they waited. As the minutes ticked by, Ophelia checked their watch over and over, waiting, heart in their throat. What were they going to do if it didn't work? But then the voice began. SCP-4569-A spoke to them in a calm, soothing male voice. It began gentle narrations of their actions, from where they chose to walk to what they chose to think about. It was familiar, unhurried. Ophelia found that it knew everything about the Foundation. A simple gaze at a containment cell could tell them all they needed to know about the SCP locked away inside, including how to avoid it and how to survive it should the worst happen. Every time they learned a fact they were not meant to know, or gleaned some new insight about one of their colleagues, or suddenly understood the new anomaly they'd been tasked to work with, a shudder would run through them. Not a fear, but something deeper. Recognition and respect. At first, Ophelia barely slept. How could they, when the voice spoke constantly, weaving its words into the quiet moments between their thoughts? It did not demand anything from them. It simply narrated, observed, and advised. And every time they learned something new from it, it would narrate for them a possible future. Should they choose to stop acting how they always had, changing how they moved through the harrowed kingdom's halls, security would know. Their bosses would know what they had done. So Ophelia learned to be normal, predictable, calm, even when the voice narrated to them a new horror. Even when it told them that the D-class that passed by in front of them was an hour away from a painful death of ripping and tearing. Even when they knew that the call about the new anomaly would end with the grisly decapitations of the initial retrieval team. Even when they gleaned of an upcoming disaster. Ophelia learned. They learned to blink at the right times, to smile and frown when it was expected, to carry on their work as though nothing had changed. And all the while, the voice smoothed their path, warning them of the prying eyes of the security cameras, where and when they were being evaluated, conversations they were better off avoiding. Days passed, and soon they no longer felt the weight of exhaustion. The voice was no longer something outside of them, something foreign. Instead, it had settled into the rhythm of their thoughts, a second presence walking in step with them, a second voice guiding them, much the same as their own always had. They had never felt so certain, so aware. And then, on the 9th day, as they sat at their desk, reading through a routine anomaly report, the voice spoke again. Ophelia will survive the upcoming breach. It will happen at Site 19. It will begin with the improper containment of a new SCP, and coincide perfectly with an attack by the Chaos Insurgency. A major breach, every anomaly here escaping together. Death on a grand scale. the likes of which this site has never seen before. Ophelia's fingers curled into heavy fists, and a look of determination spread across their face. They had to do something. Ophelia did nothing, the narrator said. Ophelia frowned. That didn't seem right. All of the deaths. Ophelia did nothing, for they knew that if they did, they would have to reveal that they had stolen and read SCP-4569, and they would be terminated instantly. Ophelia swallowed hard, and a pit began to grow in the bottom of their stomach. They could feel their muscles beginning to shake, their breaths becoming shallow and fast. They closed their eyes. Termination. So be it. If it meant saving the lives of everyone, all the D-classes, the researchers, the officers, the guards, any civilians who may be attacked when the anomalies escaped, even if it meant their death, they had a duty to protect, didn't they? Termination. Ophelia's hands clenched tighter at the thought. Their breath steadied, not in fear, not panic, but fury. Termination. For warning them? For trying to save everyone? You can't be right, Ophelia said at last. I would be saving them. Ophelia realized that no matter what they said, nobody would believe them. Ophelia's eyes widened. It was true. Whatever alarm they raised, they'd only be seen as crazy. And then, after the breach occurred anyways, Ophelia would be captured and terminated. Ridiculous. Ophelia bit down on their lower lip so tightly that blood spurted into their mouth. How ridiculous. They knew what was going to happen, and it didn't matter. They realized suddenly the truth they had been skirting around this whole time. The Foundation was run by fools. And so, for a week, Ophelia walked the halls of the Foundation, knowing. They attended meetings, knowing. They made small talk in the break room, knowing. And yet they smiled. They laughed where laughter was expected. They moved as though they were no different from before. No one suspected. And then, right on time, at exactly the moment the voice had promised, the alarms began to scream. Ophelia had stashed themselves in the library, in a well-chosen hiding place, tucked into a forgotten corner behind a row of old containment records. The blaring alarms were unnatural here, carving into the usual silence like a knife. The narrator had warned them where to be. They had known exactly what would happen in the library. And still, when the first scream shattered the silence, Ophelia flinched and silently raised their hands to cover their ears. It was brief, at least. A sharp, choking cry, the wet crunch of something solid yet brittle giving way. An instant later, it happened again, and again. There was a drumming thud of bodies collapsing. Ophelia did not peek out of their hiding place to look. Instead, They stared at the grain of the wooden shelf in front of them, trying to steady their breathing, to keep it quiet. They gritted their teeth, clenched their fists against their knees, and waited. Inside their head, the narrator spared no detail, describing to them the state of the bodies so intricately. It seemed their choice not to look didn't matter even slightly. They waited as the last gasps of the dying turned into gurgles. They waited as the silence returned at last. It was over in minutes. Ophelia let out a slow, heavy breath. The narrator had been right, once again. It had told them exactly where to be, and so they had lived. And yet, their fingers twitched again, and again their hands curled into fists and their teeth grated. This isn't fair. The unfairness racked through their body in a shaking wave. None of this had been necessary. The carnage that they knew was happening just outside the library doors, it wasn't necessary. Ophelia had spent a week walking among the doomed, smiling at them, all the while knowing that they were already dead, knowing that nothing they could have done would have saved them. The sheer incompetency of the Foundation had just let this happen. Ophelia swallowed hard, choking down the frustration, and finally moved, uncoiling, standing up from their hiding place. It was time to go. Ophelia would make their way to the nearest exit, just as the narrator had said. They began to move towards the door. The narrator's voice spoke quickly, commandingly. Ophelia looked at the second book towards the end of the topmost shelf to their left. Ophelia froze, their breath stilled in their lungs. This was not what the narrator had told them before. They'd been meant to go walking towards the exit. The narrator was going to tell them when to move, when to stop, when to hide. Why the sudden change? Slowly they turned their head to the left. The shelf was lined with books, jumbled and chaotic. It was a returned shelf that had been long forgotten, just a random mess of assorted nonsense, dusty and discarded. And there, just where the narrator had said, was a book they knew. Verdi. A coiled yellow snake peered curiously out at them from the cover. The recognition struck them like a blow. It was a children's book, an absurd thing to see in the halls of Site 19, let alone in the wake of slaughter. They had read it many times as a child, loved the journey of the snake, admired its resilience. Ophelia hesitated. Then they reached up, fingertips brushing the spine. The moment they touched it, a flicker of something wrong settled into their chest. This book shouldn't be here. They pulled it free. It was light, a book they'd read before bedtime, snuggled deep into the blankets of their childhood home. It was not a book for the chaos of the Site 19 breach. Ophelia's fingers trembled as they opened the book. The narrator murmured, as though reading alongside them. Ophelia now holds an instance of SCP-6295. Ophelia did not know what SCP-6295 was, or why it was here. The words on the page were not as they remembered. The snake was looking out at them, and the words it spoke. "There is no need to be afraid," the text above the snake announced. "I have come to deliver a message." Ophelia's breath caught. The ink on the page seemed to slither. The snake's body was still. It had to be still, and that they could have sworn that they caught flickers of movement, of shifting. The snake continued, "Your story, it is a beautiful one, but there are many like it." Ophelia's hands tightened on the book's cover. "You will find out if you wish." Ophelia put the book down. They walked out of the library. They walked to their room. The narrator, as promised, kept them safe, kept them apart from the prowling escaped anomalies. Ophelia sat down at their desk. Ophelia wrote this report. And now they are done. Now they can feel the approach. Someone was coming. Someone that the Serpent had deemed a friend. The narrator told them over and over, "Just wait, they're on their way. They will open the door. They will lead you to the Wanderer's Library. And life will be forever changed."
Mary, Mary, your voice is beautiful, my love. But I am quite surprised to hear you reading that report. I thought Scott was responsible for that.
"Niall, how long have you been there?"
Long enough?
"You should have said something. Scott isn't feeling well. I thought I'd step in to help."
I see. Scott, what's wrong?
I don't know. I just feel sick.
I understand. But come now, you two. You know as well as I do that Scott's voice is what Miranda's expecting. She's a stickler for the rules. A sudden change like this is bound to cause trouble.
What's with the concern? Why can't I read them too?
I'm simply looking out for you two. Wouldn't want you to get in trouble with our director now, would we?
She will simply have to cope. If she wants her reports, she can have them. But you can't expect Scott to read while feeling sick.
Mary, darling, you know I love hearing you speak. But you have a certain sharpness when you read. It's rote, almost clinical. Scott, though, he lives in these stories. He makes them real.
Why does that matter? They're just being uploaded to the database.
Where people listen to them sometimes. It can help, especially when facing the more dangerous anomalies.
Well, then they'll just have to cope too. If it's their lives on the line, I'm sure they can sit through my clinical reading.
Scott, my friend, look, I know you're feeling rough, but no one does this like you do. What would it take to get you back on your feet?
I don't know. Niall, I think I might be getting ill.
I know just the thing. Start a new tape.
Vault Veritas SCP Files is a podcast inspired by the SCP Foundation. Forked Tongue is based on SCP-4569 by Wancha from the SCP Wiki located at scpwiki.com/SCP-1224. It is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution Share-alike 3.0 unported license. This episode featured Justin Gellner as Scott Anderson, D.R. Thompson as Niall Connors, and Cody W. as Meriwether Parker. It was written and edited by Leola Angel. We welcome comments. Please rate and review us. Email us at vaultveritas@gmail.com. Join our Discord channel using the link in the episode description. Or for additional content, visit our Patreon. Thanks for listening.